Welcome to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast and community providing a safe space to explore and grow in mental health and well-being. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I am so glad you're here. Today's episode is an important one. We're talking about binge eating, IBS, chronic pain, and what it really looks like to recover, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too. These are the kinds of topics that get pushed to the side a lot. They're uncomfortable, misunderstood, and usually shoved under the umbrella of personal failure or lifestyle choices, when really, they're complex, human, and way more common than people think. If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of trying to fix your body or control your eating habits, if you've ever felt shame for what or how you eat, or if you've lived with chronic health issues that no one seems to fully understand, this episode is for you. Here's what we know. Binge eating isn't just about food. IBS isn't just about gut problems. And chronic pain doesn't just show up in one area of your life. These things are connected in ways that most of us aren't taught to recognize. We're told to count calories, restrict sugar, push through the pain, and blame ourselves when things get worse. We're handed advice that's often unrealistic, oversimplified, or rooted in shame. Especially if you're in a body that doesn't fit the mold, or if you've tried everything and still feel like something's not working. Michelle Ho is my guest today, and she gets it. She's a nutritional therapy practitioner and binge eating recovery coach who works with people to heal their relationship with food, not by handing them another restrictive plan, but by helping them reconnect with their body, their needs, and their own inner voice. She's been through it herself, the binging, the restriction, the chronic pain, and the burnout. And now she helps others walk a more compassionate and sustainable path. In this conversation, we talk about how diet culture plays a huge role in all of this, especially for women. We unpack the idea that binge eating is not a lack of discipline. We talk about the shame and the guilt that come with emotional eating, and how that spiral can take over your life if you're not getting the nourishment that you need, whether that's physical or emotional. We also talk about how chronic conditions like IBS and pain complicate recovery. This is one of those episodes that's full of honesty, insight, and real talk. Michelle shares what helped her break the cycle, how she works with her clients today, and what it actually looks like to come back from something that feels all-consuming. No fluff, no fake positivity, just real strategies, real experiences, and a whole lot of encouragement. If you've ever felt alone in your struggles with food, health, or self-worth, I hope you'll listen all the way through. I also hope you'll find some hope and some perspective, and maybe even a little relief. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I am super excited for tonight's conversation. I am joined by the wonderful Michelle, and we are going to be talking all about overcoming binge eating, IBS, and chronic pain. If you have any questions related to that topic or for our guest tonight, make sure to enter those. We have a question queue open. If you're here on Twitch, you could type !Q, follow that with your question and pop that into the chat. Or if you're here on YouTube, just go ahead and put it into the chat and we'll get to you as soon as we can. But before we dive in to the discussion tonight, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Michelle. Michelle Kester-Ho is a nutritional therapy practitioner and binge eating recovery coach who helps people break free from binge eating and inconsistent eating patterns by nourishing their bodies without restrictive diets, guilt, or self-criticism. Having overcome the binge restrict cycle herself 6 years ago, Michelle understands firsthand how exhausting and overwhelming that can feel. She developed a 4-key approach to help clients heal their relationship with food, body, and exercise so they can build sustainable, health-supportive habits with self-compassion. Michelle is passionate about helping people move away from rigid, all-or-nothing food rules and instead reconnect with food as a source of nourishment and joy and not stress. She believes true health comes from listening to your body, meeting your true nutritional needs, and creating a way of living that supports both physical and emotional well-being without shame or deprivation. And those are all things that I think we can all agree on. If you are looking to connect with Michelle, I'm going to go ahead and post a couple of links for y'all to do that with. website, Facebook, Linktree as well. Feel free to go and connect with her there. And yeah, Michelle, just thank you so much for agreeing to join us today and for taking the time out of your day to be here.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We were talking a little bit ahead of time and just saying like, yes, sometimes this can be a little bit of a sensitive topic. And I know at least on YouTube, like everything that I put related to this will get marked as sensitive content or whatever, just because it has like the word binge eating in it or eating disorders. And I get that. I totally understand. But these conversations are super important to have. Super important for people to know that they're not alone. Super important for people to know that there is hope out there. And super important for just the information that gets put out there related to this stuff. So I understand having to market as sensitive. I understand it is a sensitive topic, but I am so glad we are here to talk about it today. So thank you for being willing to share your story in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I just second everything that you said. It is sensitive and I mean we can get more and more into that, but I think it's so important that it's talked about because shame is such a huge contributor to the problem. And secrecy as well, and just feeling alone. So when those things are conquered with a little bit of conversation, it can go a really long way. I've had many people just like chat with me, for example, on Instagram, and it's like um, we start a conversation and they tell me like, "You're the only person I've ever talked to about this,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's healing for them to have that conversation. So anyway, I totally rambled. Sorry.
No, no, you ramble all you want. We love a good ramble here. It's all good. So I want to start off. You said you're a nutritional therapy practitioner and binge eating recovery coach. What are those, and how did you become interested in doing that?
Yeah. So, binge eating recovery coach is probably the simpler one to
Yeah.
start with. So, most of you probably know what a life coach is. So, I actually have training as a life coach, and that's where I got most of that. And then, of course, my own experience recovering from binge eating, I added to that to specialize in binge eating recovery. So, it's basically like a life coach for that specific thing. And then you've got nutritional therapy. Practitioner is easier to understand if you understand what it isn't. So, what it isn't is like a nutritionist or a dietitian.
Mm.
Um, a nutritionist is like, you can kind of think of it as a broad term. You could be a nutritionist, you could call yourself a nutritionist if you've like read a couple of books and started giving advice, or if you've actually had a longer education and lots of experience. Um, but then a dietitian, that's like your doctorate level of a nutrition person, right? They're going to be in the hospitals, taking care of people who are really urgently needing care, and they're really, really, really well educated. And then you've got a nutritional therapy practitioner, moi, who is takes a little bit of a different approach. We don't diagnose, we don't treat like diseases. But we look at health from a very foundational approach and a very individual approach. And we focus on a couple of specific foundations of health, which are digestion, blood sugar regulation, sleep, stress, and a nutrient dense diet. And we take a look at all of those when we're considering how we can help someone deal with the root cause of what's going on with them, and whether that's like IBS or chronic pain or some other kind of digestive issue, or lots of times skin conditions.
Mm.
But there are nutritional therapy practitioners that specialize in like many different things. My specialty is binge eating recovery paired with the life coaching in that realm. So I hope that kind of gives an idea and makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I have heard a lot of those terms before, like dietitian, I've heard life coach, I've heard nutritionist, all of those, but I guess I've never really looked up what the differences are. So I appreciate you kind of spelling that out because it's easy to get lost in all the terms, and just be like, oh, I don't know, a dietitian is the same as this. So
Right, right. Well, and then it's also like who do you go to,
hmm.
right? And it really depends on what you want help with or what you're dealing with.
Yeah, it sounds like you look more at the whole picture rather than just little bit of information.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's where that stress and sleep plays in,
Hmm.
which I think are huge, and we might talk about it more. But those were really big parts of my recovery as well, and kind of like learning how to care for myself. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Stress and sleep are something that I know have been getting more attention lately, as far as like we're not getting enough sleep in general, especially women are not getting enough sleep, and we actually need more sleep than previously thought. And just the amount of stress, like our body can't distinguish the stress necessarily from being chased by a lion versus a deadline of an email at work. Like it's the same to your body. So really kind of trying to get into that. And I hope more and more research comes out. I wish it was already out. I wish it was already done. But I think we're just starting to really understand kind of the impacts that those two things can have.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, like you said, I think there's more and more coming out, and
Hmm.
what's cool is there's more and more also coming out specifically for women,
Yeah.
and that's huge in the realm of like nutrition, especially because, for example, for one specific thing, intermittent fasting, which is something I played around with for a couple of years myself. Most of the studies on that have been done on men.
Yeah.
Um, and so only very recently we're understanding better like how to actually how you can maybe do that with some women and how it's actually really problematic for a lot of them,
Mm.
especially young women. So yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating stuff.
Yeah. It really is. Would you share your favorite TED Talk and your favorite book with us?
Yes. So TED Talk is relevant to this actually this topic, and that's Brene Brown's TED Talk on vulnerability. That one's my favorite because it actually I feel like was the like instigate like the initiation of me actually starting recovery. When I heard that talk, it gave me the idea of sharing to overcome shame. And she talks about that so powerfully. And I had been just living with this issue by myself. Nobody knew what I was dealing with and what I was struggling with, and I was really, really, really embarrassed by it. And so I didn't want anybody to know. But listening to her talk about how that was actually the way to break out of shame and feeling bad, um, yeah, like I didn't initially like listen to her TED talk and then start talking to people,
Yeah.
but like a couple, a little ways down the road, like I kept listening to her and kept listening to her, and eventually finally started actually talking about it to someone. So I'm so grateful for that TED talk for
Yeah.
that reason. Yeah. Um, let's see. What was the other one? Book?
Book. Yeah.
Favorite book? Yeah. The Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud. Don't know if you're familiar at
I
all.
am not.
Yeah. So I couldn't actually tell you a lot of detail about the books anymore because it's been years since I've read them. But yeah, it's just like a fantasy trilogy with demons and familiars, and it's really fun. And I got so attached to the characters. I love fantasy. So
Now, is this like romantasy type fantasy or just straight fantasy?
straight fantasy.
Straight fantasy. Okay. It's
Mhm.
important because everyone knows that I read a lot of different books and sometimes they are more on the romantasy side than on the fantasy side. So whenever I do the reviews and everything that I review everything I read on Goodreads. I always make sure to like put this is recommended for adults only.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yeah. This one I think would be fine for young adults.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I'll have to recommend it to my oldest. He's 18, so technically an adult, but I'm not going to recommend something. I'm going to hold off on recommending the kinds of books that I enjoy.
Okay. Well, I'm kind of interested
So that.
in learning some more about some of those books, but
Oh,
um,
I've got lots of recommendations. I'm currently reading the Fourth Wing books. If I was going to recommend one though, it probably wouldn't be that to start with.
okay.
um,
Not that
but
to start with.
but it is an so how do I describe why I don't necessarily recommend it? Some of the writing in the second book is like a TV show to me. It's like there's a teeny tiny problem that they have to solve, and they spend all the time talking about this one teeny tiny problem, and then they move to the next one. So it's a very like serial. It's almost like she was trying to write novellas and put them out instead of weaving it all together. But it is a great story. Like overall, it is a great story so far. I've just started the third book. But yeah, I can definitely send you some recommendations if you're interested in the romantasy side of things. I'll look back and see which ones I would recommend and send you some that are a good intro, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'd love that because I'm actually well, I'm not. I'm like halfway through a current series that I'm been working on for a bit, and I'm scared of it ending. And then I'm thinking I have to have something.
Gotta have something right. Yes. Yeah. Oh,
I gotta have something planned.
I totally get that because it's definitely one of those. So I knew the ending of one of the books I was just reading was going to be bad because my friend had warned me that it was going to be bad. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to read that. And then I'm going to read something really short, really easy, just to give me a little bit of like, you can still read and not die of, just sobbing into the couch.
Right. Oh, man.
Kind of thing.
Completely. Yeah, no, I get that completely. I get so into the book. It's
yes.
another, lose myself completely. Ever since I was little, I remember like it was grieving at the end.
Yes. Yes. There have been a couple of books that have done that to me recently. The book This Time Tomorrow, I don't know if you've heard of that one. It is not fantasy. It is just a kind of it's just a novel, like almost slice of life, but with a little bit of sci-fi to it also. And I sobbed. Like I was over at my boyfriend's house and I was just crying. I was like, I need all the tissues in this house right now. But it was really good. And I just had to pick up another one for sure.
So a good cry.
Yeah. It was a good cry. All right, so we'll get on. Like I said, we love a good ramble here. So
I know I had more questions, but I was also like, I'll let her see if she wants to go back on track or not.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about books later if you want, for sure. I'm always down for that, most definitely. But we are here to talk about overcoming binge eating and kind of that recovery piece to it. So can you share a little bit about your own story and just kind of how you faced binge eating and what do you think was the cause for that and what played into that for you?
Yeah. So I would have no idea of this when I'm struggling with it, but the cause retrospectively was definitely undernourishment and restriction. And when I say undernourishment, I mean not just with food, although that's the biggest thing, but with sleep, with just loving myself, with just self-care in general. But let's see. So where do I want to go with this? As far as like how I started, what was the question? How I started?
Just kind of what your journey was like, or your kind of your experience with binge eating and maybe what played into that a little bit.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it really became a problem for me in college. At that point, I had started to gain some weight. I never really struggled a lot with weight gain, but it was some weight and it was more than I ever had. And we are bombarded, I think all of us in society, with this idea that gaining any weight is bad, and you need to be as thin as possible. And that was definitely how I felt for myself. So I got to a place where I found myself eating tons and tons at once. And this was like whenever I was stressed or whenever I was procrastinating on something. For example, at one point, I remember I would frequently procrastinate on essays that were due for school at the time. And I found myself finishing up this essay that was due at midnight. And it was like 11:58. I hit send. Finally done with it. I relax back, but I look around me and the whole dorm room that I'm sitting in is covered in wrappers, empty wrappers of
Mm.
Pop-Tarts. And I felt like sick to my stomach. I felt disgusted with myself. And I thought, like, this has to change. I have to do something about this. Um, so that's really when I realized that it was a problem. I mean, prior to that, I definitely had a lot of anxiety as a kid growing up. My parents called me a worrywart. Um, and in fact, when I would get really worried and anxious, they would often tell me, "Hey, go eat something."
Oh,
That's
wow.
probably what right. Well, and the thing is, they weren't necessarily wrong. A lot of the
Yeah.
times that did help, and I was hungry and I would get hangry, but it's still, it kind of probably played into where I turned to food for comfort whenever I felt anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so anyway, back to the college scene, that's where it kind of came apparent to me, like, oh, this is an issue. And I thought, okay, well, what do I have to do? I need to get on a diet, get healthy, and lose this weight. And so I started running. I started learning about quote unquote healthy eating. I did learn a lot of really good stuff, uh, but I lost a ton of weight and got actually underweight for me. And at that point, the binge eating was worse. It was worse than it
Mm.
ever had been. And it was like a daily thing instead of like every couple of days or once a week. Um, and it started to become like this secret thing. And I would find myself like, I lived with a couple of friends at 1 year, and like I would go downstairs in the dark when everyone was sleeping and just like pick at things and start eating. And I was like, what is wrong with me? And that's the thing about binge eating is we think something's wrong with us, and um, it feels like there's this, you could say, like, demon or like this other
Mm.
person inside of you. And it was like, because I could be eating healthy all day long, or what I thought was healthy. I could be like looking to everybody else like I had it all together. But all of a sudden, like this urge would hit, and it was like I wasn't me anymore. Um, so anyway, that's kind of how it felt a lot of the time. Um, but undernourishment was definitely a big thing, and that's why, like, my restrictiveness, that's why getting underweight actually made things worse for me. Um, it wasn't, I'm kind of fast forwarding a bit here, but it wasn't until a life coach that I was working with pointed out one day, she was like, "Hey, do you think maybe the fact that you only ate an orange and a cup of coffee this all day is the reason that you're eating so much at night?"
Mm.
And I was like, that's a really good point. Maybe you're right. And it's, we have blind spots. Sometimes we just don't know. Like, I had researched and learned a lot about nutrition, and yet that didn't occur to me. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've definitely talked with my own kids about that. Like sometimes they're like, I'm so hungry, I don't know what I want. And so our rule is like, okay, if you're not sure what you want to eat, or if you are feeling a little bit anxious for some reason, or you can't tell what's wrong, like go have something with protein, go have something with fiber, and drink some water. Like those are the three things that I'm like, go make sure you get some protein, some fiber, and some water, and just make sure that you're feeling okay before you make any decisions or before you get to that catastrophic piece. So like initially, whenever you said my parents would tell me if I was being really worried, would tell me to go eat something, I was like, oh, that doesn't sound good. But then I do that with my own kids. I'm like, okay, go get these very specific things because your brain needs these things to function. So I get that advice. It just didn't hit me, like I didn't make that connection right away.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's not necessarily like I would ever say don't give that advice.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, like if you're low on blood sugar and you're
Hmm.
hungry, yeah, you're probably gonna feel a little anxious, or people have different ways that they feel.
Yeah.
But that's why we say hangry, right? That's why
Hmm.
it's a word.
Yes.
So yes.
Yeah, we have a couple of family members who get very hangry, and it's like, oh, you that grab a Snickers commercial. I remember when that commercial first came out, and this had to be in like the 2000s, but I was at home. I think we were watching American Idol or something even, and this really would have been like 2001, 2002. But they came out with that commercial for Snickers, and we all in the room looked at my dad and said, "That's you."
Oh my gosh.
Oh, because he definitely does get to that stage, and he's like, he just needs to eat something, and then he'll feel a little bit better. So going back to when you were in college and you would do these essays and you'd be under this pressure for that deadline, and you said you'd look around and you'd see all these wrappers. Were you eating without just thinking about it because you were so focused on the deadline, or was it something that you would be in the just in the middle of it, kind of zoned in, or was it something else?
Yeah, for me, I was usually at least somewhat aware
Mm,
of my binge eating. For some people, actually, they get to a point where they're like it's so unconscious that they're not even really aware of it happening.
yeah.
Um, but for me, I was always usually somewhat aware. It's just that when that urge took over, like I was aware, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
um, I didn't mean that for that to rhyme, but I'm glad it did. But yeah, I was aware and I didn't care, and it would just go for it. And yeah, it was sort of a way to procrastinate, but I would like still work on it at the same time. Like, I'll have a little Pop Tart, go into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, just kind of supporting what you're doing with a little bit of eating support as well.
Sure.
And I think
Yeah.
like I know I myself have been there for sure. If I'm on a deadline, I'll put some chips on my desk or whatever, and it's like I just need something to crunch on while I work on this so that I can power through a little bit and kind of get to the other side. So I can imagine it could easily get to a point where it's like I did not put together that it was this much at
Right.
that point.
Right.
And I know you also, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because like you're right, like that can be somewhat of a really just normal
Mm,
thing. And so that's where it gets kind of cloudy, right? Like, are we dealing with like binge eating? Or are we dealing with, oh, I just, wasn't really paying attention and
yeah.
I ate like five candy bars or something. Um, but yeah, anyway, we can get probably more into that later.
Well, I mean, we can get into that now too. So how does someone recognize if their eating habits are just bad habits or just got out of control for a moment, or if it is part of that binge restrict cycle? How does someone recognize that?
Yeah. So I think it's very personal. Well, so the first thing I should say is like I can't diagnose.
Absolutely. Right.
That's not my job as a coach or a nutritional therapy practitioner, and can't diagnose you on something like this, right?
Yeah.
Even if I could, but yeah, it's usually very personal. And first of all, the frequency is a big part. So like
Mm,
if you had a period or a moment where you kind of overate and you're like, oh, oops. And then you're like, you move on with life,
yeah.
no big deal. Someone who's struggling with binge eating, it wouldn't be no problem, no big deal. It would be like, oh my God, I just blew everything, so much guilt and
Mm,
shame. So there's a lot more like just feeling terrible about yourself wrapped into it. Um, but then the other part of it is once they realize it, like there is no, they feel out of control. So it feels like they can't stop. So if you didn't struggle with binge eating, you might be sitting there mindlessly eating. Maybe you have a little extra, a little too much. You notice, oops. And then you're like, I think I'm going to stop now. But with binge eating, you could be doing that and this is too much. You've gone too far and you just keep going anyway. So
mm,
there's this sense of being out of control. Um, if you go to like the clinical definition, you're going to get specifics about frequency. So that's going to be like usually one time a week minimum that this is happening, and that's happening for at least 3 weeks.
mm,
Um, so that gives you an idea. That said, like I've worked with people who like all the way on this huge spectrum from like they just kind of have been on and off diets. They're just a little bit of an all or nothing kind of person around food. And they feel like they would like to be more balanced. They feel like it's either doing really, really healthy eating or eating whatever and not caring about it. So that's like, it's like this broad spectrum where that's like in the same realm of the same cycle, but we just haven't made it so intense to where on the other side, I've worked with people like myself who are binging every single night and it's a secret and they feel like it's really affecting their mental health and getting in the way of their life, or maybe they're making up for it with purging or laxatives or excessive working out, that kind of thing.
I would imagine that it's hard to kind of figure out, like, am I working out excessively or am I just working out and that's a good thing? Like, there's such a focus on working out is good. Everyone should work out. The more you can work out, the better. You know, there's all kinds of people who work out for hours and hours every day and they're just celebrated for it. Like, it's such a good thing all the time. Is there a way to tell, oh, this is compensating. This is something I'm doing to compensate or to punish myself for what happened last night or what happened this morning or whatever? Is there not an easy way, I guess? Like, of course, there's not going to be an easy button or everyone would just push the easy button, right? But yeah, and I guess that ties in. Also, you brought up a couple of different diets, intermittent fasting, and just diet culture in general. So how does that mentality of everyone should work out, everyone should be on a diet. We've got all these Weight Watchers commercials and all of these different things coming at us all the time. How does that mentality contribute to binge eating and emotional eating struggles instead of help it?
Yeah. Well, you could say it's practically the cause.
Mm.
And it's more complex than that, but like it is in a way, because a lot of the work that I do with people to break free from this problem is um, totally rewiring these diet mentality mindsets.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a huge cause. And the reason for that is because, unfortunately, our idea of like healthy nutrition from diet culture is largely it's for losing weight. And that's the only thing it's for. And it's about calories in, calories out. Um, and so you're like, of course, I'm going to exercise more. And the more I exercise,
Yeah.
the better. And the less I eat, the better. But when it comes to like something like binge eating or even yo-yo dieting, that actually drives your struggle. Um, I'm going back to what was your first question. This is a thing where I could just ramble on and I'm like, okay, what was the
Yeah,
first
go for
question?
it.
Let's see. It was how could someone tell? Is that what
Yeah,
it was?
yeah, just the see, listen, I rambled so much in my question that I don't even remember what the original question was, which is fine.
Okay.
Match made in heaven. It's
Okay.
all good. But yeah, just especially when it comes to something like working out, how do you know, I guess when you've gone overboard? How do you know when you've
Yeah.
binged working out?
Right, right. Okay, so yeah, so that one was me, by the way, also. And if you had asked me, um, however many years ago, 8 years ago, when I was really working out a ton, if that was a problem, I would say no. This is great. I love it.
Yeah.
And in fact, I didn't exercise to punish myself. I really enjoyed it. I loved exercise, and I still do. Um, so yeah, it can get cloudy again, and it's kind of complicated and it's very personal. But I think when you almost practically said it earlier, when you were um, like how does someone tell if they're overdoing it or if they're doing it because
Hmm.
of making up for? That is very clearly like we can clearly decide that if you just ask yourself, am I exercising now because I ate something earlier that I wasn't supposed to, or because of how much I ate yesterday? Is that the reason that I'm exercising right now? And if that's the only reason, then more than likely it's feeding into that binge restrict cycle.
Yeah.
Um, so, but on the other hand, then you might get to a place where, okay, I'm not exercising for the sake of making up for what I ate, but I exercise a lot. Is that okay? That comes down to the more like very subtle things and listening to our body. And that's been like a continuous journey for me personally. And I've
Mm.
actually exercised a lot less than I used to. And that's just because my body keeps telling me to.
Yeah.
You'll get signs and signals. For me, I didn't have a period for 2 years.
Wow.
And that was when I was, I was a collegiate runner, a cross country runner. So I was running like 40 to 50 miles a week, on top of also doing like extra exercise in the gym a couple of times a week, and spending a couple hours swimming. So it was doing a ton of exercise, and I was also cutting my calories really low,
Mm.
which, by the way, I actually want to say the amount because while it could be triggering, a lot of people wouldn't think it's low. It was 1,800. A lot of people wouldn't think that's
Yeah.
that low, but it is so low. It is so low. Anyway, so yeah, so listening to your body's cues. Are you anxious a lot of the time? Or do you lack a period? Do you have aches and pains that are building up? Do you have a lot of hormonal issues going on? Those can be really impacted by how much exercise you do and if it's too much.
Yeah. 1,800 calories does sound like a lot because I remember when 1,200 calories was supposed to be the magic number for all diets. It was like you shouldn't be eating more than 1,200 calories. And looking, I mean, I hope that's still, I'm so far away from diet culture that it's crazy to me to think that I ever would be this far away from diet culture looking back. But like it's definitely one of those things that if you had told me in the future, they would have said like, don't go below 1,800, don't go below 2,000, whatever. It's like, but 1,200 was the number they swore up and down, left, right, and center that was the number you needed to be as a starting point. And then if you
Right.
wanted to eat more, then you needed to do more exercise and get that net calorie goal under 1,200 still. And
Right.
it's both fascinating and terrifying to me to look back and go, that was the advice. That was the common advice then.
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's not
Yeah.
now.
Well, believe it or not, like not it's been kind of recently. I haven't been on Doom in a while, but the last time I checked, it was frequently prescribing that amount.
Mm.
Um, and I'm, which is such a bummer because there's actually a lot of really good stuff on there too.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part about like a lot of even diet culture in general is like there is some really awesome stuff that you can learn about nutrition and caring for your body.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's so wrapped up in this really low calorie amount and again, just lose weight and don't consider all these other foundations of your health
Yeah.
that really matter. Yeah. And don't consider how complex it is to try to estimate. Okay, this is the thing. Calories in, calories out. That is a thing. Like it does cause weight loss, weight gain, but there's so much that plays into each of these. How much you eat, even the labels on your food are inaccurate.
Yeah.
So you're never going to get that accurate. And then also calories out, you're never going to get that accurate.
Mm-hmm.
The apps that we use are terribly inaccurate. You even if you we don't even have the science to be able to estimate for you as a singular human being how much you're burning. And it varies day to day.
Yeah.
Like especially for women, there's with your changes in your cycle, it's going to vary. I forget which week it was, but I have a friend who specializes in women's hormonal health, and she was informing me that there's a week where we need 300 calories on average more every single day
Mm-hmm.
than all the other weeks. And that's just because our hormonal cycle.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it's so complex and we just can't simplify it that much and think that we're going to really care for a whole human.
Yeah. Yeah. And your body, like your body changes your water requirements too. Like it's going to hold on to water more than it's going to hold on to water tomorrow. Maybe you're holding on to more water today than you're going to hold on to tomorrow. And that has a lot to do with your weight also and how much you gain or lose. And there is, it's really complex how much goes into a diet program for an individual. And there are great websites out there. There are great websites out there. but they're not going to be personalized for you. Even if they say that they are personalized for you, it's not really personalized for you. It's based on some formula that doesn't include a human being.
Right.
And doesn't
Right.
account for human behaviors either. So
Hmm.
it's tough. Like diet culture really is a tough thing to get over, get around, and get through sometimes for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you've also navigated chronic pain and IBS. Did those conditions influence your relationship with food and have they impacted your healing journey as well?
Yeah, definitely. Hugely so, I would say. And in fact, those two played a huge part in me really wanting to recover.
Mm.
Um, so I guess in a way, a blessing, even though they suck. But yeah, like with IBS, I for that issue, a lot of the solutions come along with following some amount of like a gut health diet protocol,
Hmm.
or an elimination diet to find out, what your food sensitivities are, these kinds of things. And I couldn't do that when I struggled with binge eating. Like I didn't
Mm.
have that level of control over what I was going to eat or not eat. And so it was impossible to heal while I was still binge eating. So that really drove me to want to stop. And then also the chronic pain, because um, that the chronic pain developed over time. And like I told you earlier, so I was very, very, very active and athletic. And so I sort of kept pushing binge eating aside because it was like, well, I can always run this off. So
Mm.
it'll be okay. And so I made it okay for myself, but then I started having chronic knee pain and I had to stop running and I had to stop lifting as heavy of weights and I had to, and so like I kept being like limited more and more. And I kind of think of it almost as the universe was telling me, it was like, hey, like, you need to deal with this because you're not going to be able to keep just running these calories off. So yeah, it really pushed me to want to recover. I can't tell you that's like 100% of a good reason or not, but it got me there and it got me
Yeah.
asking for help when I realized I couldn't do it on my own. But yeah, but they also played a role in the complexity, I think, of recovery, especially with IBS. Um, because there is a lot out there in regards to how to recover from binge eating, where people talk about intuitive eating, which is great, or just letting go of diets completely, which is great. And if you have food sensitivities, there might be certain foods that you have to restrict or you have to avoid. And that's
Mm.
the case for me. And so I couldn't simply just let go of all of that. Um, I had to kind of get around it. And so it added some complexity. But I still managed it. And I like to emphasize that because I know a lot of people have conditions where they have to do some restriction with their diet, who struggle with binge eating. And I want them to know that they can still recover. You can still break free from it.
Hmm.
And it really, really comes down to like the place you're coming from when you think about those restrictions.
Yeah.
Um, so, like for me, um, for a while I was not having any gluten, and for me that was like gluten is not bad. There's nothing wrong with it. It's okay if I eat it. It's allowed, but if I have that, I'm gonna suffer.
Hmm.
And that's a very different place than like I just shouldn't have gluten and gluten's bad and I'm bad if I eat gluten and et cetera, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, restricting because it's something that your mind is telling you you shouldn't have versus this is better for my body. My body reacts better if I don't have this. I think those are two completely different ways of thinking about it. But I'm sure it's easy to kind of fall into that trap of this is bad for me. I'm bad if I have it. And it's kind of the distinction between those two.
Yeah. Yeah, it's challenging. And especially if you're someone who has been struggling with binge eating or even just overeating and feeling some amount of out of control of food.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like, it's a process. It's a process. It's a practice too. It takes time and effort. But you'll get better at talking to yourself that way, at making decisions that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as you practice it more.
You mentioned the chronic pain kind of started knee pain, probably related to running so much. Was the IBS
Right?
something that you struggled with all your life? Did it hit at a certain point? Was it something that came on suddenly, or was it over time, or how did that kind of journey unfold?
Yeah, it was around like 15, 16.
Mm.
Um, and as is often the case with these kinds of things, there was probably a lot of things playing into it. During that time, I mentioned sleep. I got next to none of it, like maybe 3, 4 hours a night.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I was a very busy, like doing extracurricular activities. I did orchestra and cross country after school. I was in AP classes, and so would be doing homework and studying until like 2 a.m. So I didn't sleep because, no time for that. Um, but other things that probably played into it, I did go study abroad, and I did eat some
Oh.
random things, and that might have contributed a little bit. Some kind of stuff like that. I also didn't know a thing about nutrition, and this is where I think, okay, there is something to some diets because we're talking about nutrition, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like there are differences in nutritious food and not nutritious food. And I didn't know how to eat well. I had cereal for breakfast, and if I had breakfast, and then, like leftover pizza for lunch, and didn't eat enough for how active I was and how busy I was. And I had a bunch of ice cream for dinner. And so, like, and that was regular for me. So these could have absolutely contributed to some gut microbiome imbalances and the problems that I faced later on. So plus binge eating.
Yeah. And you said that those kind of fed into your recovery. Was that the main thing that motivated you to start your recovery and kind of healing and finally getting help? Or was there a singular moment or kind of I guess, just what led into your motivation to start getting better?
Yeah. So those led into it, and probably pushed me to like I tried a ton of things on my own. I actually dug into like I didn't ever go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but I considered it and read up on some books on alcohol recovery. Why? Well, because it felt like I was addicted to food.
Mm.
And so I thought I just need solutions that addicts, someone who's addicted to a substance would go to. Um, so I did that. And then, of course, tried a bunch of different diets and things like that. And so these problems drove those acts, but it wasn't until probably more of a singular moment when I actually decided to get help. Um, of course, there's the adding up of all of the trying and failing and trying and failing. But I also had, at the time, I was a personal trainer, and I had lots of clients who were relying on me, and I was really great at helping them in their fitness. I think I was a great coach in general. I mean, if that's okay to say. But when it came to food, I could give them like general, here's healthy, but I couldn't help them with it because
Mm.
I felt like a total fraud. Um, and I wanted to, and I don't know if you can relate, but for me, like I would do more for my clients than I would do for myself.
Yeah.
Um, so that really, really pushed me to consider it. And then the final key moment would have been I had a mentor and friend who had a conversation with me. Um, and I was mentioning that I was considering getting help. And he said, well, the reason I wasn't doing it is because I thought, well, this problem isn't really that bad.
Mm.
Like I'm getting away with it. I'm fine. I'm not dying. Um, and maybe I can do it on my own. And like all these things that would just stop me from getting help. And also the embarrassment. And I just thought this problem wasn't a big enough deal. It wasn't worthy of getting support, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
so he pointed that out to me, and he also pointed out that, hey, like you won't feel like this is worthy until you make it worthy. You won't feel worthy until you make yourself worthy. And so that really hit me hard. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I need to act like this is worthy to be solved before I feel like it, and then it will be. So yeah. And then I ended up finding a coach to help me, and yeah, that was that.
Yeah. I mean, it's great to have friends who can call you out on your bullshit, right? Like, you got to have people who are willing to say, "Hey, your thinking is just completely messed up right now, and you need to reevaluate a little bit in as kind a way as needed."
Absolutely, absolutely. And you got to be ready for it and all of that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You brought up Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know that you also brought up kind of the addiction and everything. And a lot of people describe binge eating as feeling like an addiction. Why do you say that it's not?
Yeah. So this is one thing where I'm kind of agnostic.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like there's Overeaters Anonymous,
Mhm.
which treats it more like an addiction and has helped a ton of people. And so I don't want to like say that that's completely wrong,
Sure.
but and I also, for me, the thought of it being an addiction felt, for whatever reason, more difficult to overcome.
Mm.
And also, the way I think of binge eating is the best way to describe it is probably like, okay, if you hold your breath for a while, all of a sudden you have to breathe. Do we say that we're addicted to air,
Mm.
to oxygen? No. And binge eating is largely caused by restriction, by eating too little, by being nourished too little, in whatever way that means for the particular person. And so, are we addicted to food, or do we need food and we're depriving ourselves of it?
Mm.
Um, and so that's more of how I see it. And with the clients I've worked with, when we really go into what they've been eating, even if they're eating, most of them are eating too little calories in general. But even if they're eating enough calories, what you would think would be enough, in some way or form, they aren't getting enough nourishment. Maybe not enough protein, maybe not fiber. A lot of the time, not enough fat, because a lot of people restrict fat.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, they're not getting enough of it regularly when they're not binging. Or they're binging, and this is where you've got the cycle, right? They're binging, and so it's like, oh, Michelle, like I ate like a couple thousand calories. So of course I ate enough. But then to make up for it, they exercised extra, or they skipped a meal, or maybe it was little. Maybe instead of spaghetti, they had salad the next meal. But
Hmm.
like those little things add up and it just repeats itself because then your body's like, oh, we didn't get enough there. Gotta drive you to eat some more. So yeah. So I just really see it as a biological thing. Like, there's a recipe for binge eating.
Yeah.
If you restrict someone enough, um, there's also a study that goes into this if you're if you're interested.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there was a study done, not a particularly humane study, but it was done on they took several healthy men. By healthy, it just means they didn't have any medical conditions. They didn't have any eating disorders, any tendencies towards that. They took these guys and they starved them. Um, by the way, starvation was, I don't remember the exact amount, but something around 1,600 calories.
Yeah. I was
Uh-huh.
seeing where that was going for sure.
Uh-huh. Yep. So they put them on this, and I forget exactly how long it was, but they put them on this, And what happened was they found these men started obsessing about their body when they weren't before. They started checking themselves in the mirror more often. They started feeling kind of like uncomfortable in their own skin. Like these are like literally like signs of like disordered eating, right? But these guys were getting it because they were starving. And so then when they came out of the starvation in the refeed phase, they were binge eating. They were eating
Mm.
uncontrollably, and they described it as they couldn't stop. And they described feelings of guilt and shame and feeling like, why am I doing this? Um, so, yeah, I just think that's fascinating. I could share the link for you of that study, but it's a really
Yeah.
good way to see that it's biological. Like
Hmm.
we need to eat. Yeah.
Is it the Minnesota starvation experiment? Is it that one?
Yep.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a whole wiki page on it. I'll share that link for those who are here and want to go read more about it. But yeah, this is a lot. That's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
I really think that I've never considered like calling binge eating an addiction really is focusing on the I'm bad part instead of the I need nourishment. I need to figure out how to better nourish my body because it is. And that it makes total sense to me. Again, I agree. Like Overeaters Anonymous does great work, and not to take anything away from that, or from anyone who's treating it as an addiction, or if that works for you to get help, then that's what needs to happen. But yeah, I mean, calling it an addiction is really saying it's bad that you're eating,
Right.
and that's
Right.
that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really the reason it didn't quite resonate with
Hmm.
me to go that direction. Again, I considered going to Overeaters Anonymous, um, but didn't for that reason. It's
Yeah.
just have a very intuitive nature, and it was just, that doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your mental health play into your struggle with food, and how did your recovery then impact your mental health?
Yeah. So I mentioned before that I was a worrywart.
Hmm.
So I did struggle with some anxiety. Um, and so I do think that played in. I was definitely like wanted to be good and seen as good and do a good job. And so I worked really hard for that. Have friends who would call me type A, but I don't know. I waffle. I have other friends who wouldn't. So it depends. But that's really common with binge eaters is they're perfectionistic, they're hard workers, type A, very health conscious.
Mm.
So I would tend to get obsessive. And I mean, maybe I was obsessive about my books, right? Like grieving about the characters, and so then I became obsessive about health when I was thinking that that was really important. Um, and so yeah, there were these little traits that were also part of like how I dealt with things mentally and emotionally that played into my struggle with food. Um, and with recovery, those things were helped. I can't say like I still have been on a journey of dealing with anxiety
Hmm.
and kind of having that be better. But what I will say is recovery from binge eating kind of gave me a space to actually deal with those things. Um, because in the past, I would turn to food for that. And so once I didn't feel like I had to turn to food, then it was like, oh, okay, now I can really like try to do something that would be more helpful. So it opened up space for that, and I've been able to find some better avenues of regulating my emotions and dealing with things that come up. And by no way am I perfect. Um, what was the rest of your question?
I mean, it was just that kind of,
Yeah.
how was your mental health while you were binge eating, and how did your recovery improve your mental health? But then I think the way that you just described that as like it freed up the space for you to work on yourself in different ways. I wish I wish more people would kind of have that realization of, oh, if I improve this part of my life, it's not just that part of your life that can improve because then you're setting yourself up for success in other ways as well. And if you can figure out whatever it is that you're facing, if you can figure out how to face it and face it in a way that is healthy and that works for you, it could free up some brain space. It could free up some energy. It could free up all kinds of different things that can then help you focus on, anxiety is not always curable, but focus on managing something else and focus on just improving your life in another way. And so I like the way that you put that. I'm glad that you put it that way, of just the freeing up the resources to work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the biggest things that I wanted. Because like with when it's talking about even like gut health protocols, right? And that goes back to nutrition, but like I wanted to be able to do that stuff. So yeah, it was really huge. It's like I actually be able to do life and achieve some of the things I want to achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another trait also I forgot to mention that played into it was I was really, really self-critical. Really low self-esteem. Just didn't feel good about myself. And that's part of what drove me to want to lose weight too. But I think I want to mention that because it's really, really a very, like, I don't know any binge eater that I've ever spoken to who isn't probably very self-critical, especially in the realm of food. Maybe they aren't in other areas, but in that area. And I will say I am still self-critical, but I have created a very lovely voice around food, at least.
Yeah.
And you can practice that and build it up and learn to have a compassionate voice.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's a skill, and you can work on it and you can strengthen it. And no one's ever perfect at almost anything, but you can get better. You can get better at it for sure. Are there any common misconceptions about binge eating and emotional eating that you wish more people understood?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have a long list of them. So, for one, binge eating is not a lack of discipline or willpower. I think I definitely thought it was. I was like, oh, I'm just not disciplined enough. But in fact, I have a theory that people who end up struggling with like binge eating at its worst are actually some of the most willpower, the highest level of willpower people. And the reason I think this is because if you just think about it this way, say two people go on a diet. One person goes on this diet and it's really restrictive and they're like, oh, this is really hard and this sucks. And you know what? I don't want to do this diet. Move on with their life. Cool. Binge eater person goes on this diet. They're like, okay, this sucks, but you know what? I have to keep going. I must hold on to this. I must make it work. I have the will and the way. And they hold on so long that then their body revolts. Um, and so it's not a lack of willpower. It's you have so much willpower, you pushed beyond what your body was wanting you to do anymore. And it was like, hey, we just gotta force you. So that's a really big one. Um, what else? People think binge eaters are like greedy, that they're like just want to eat, and binge eaters often think themselves as greedy, like, oh, God, why do I eat this much? Like I shouldn't. Sometimes it can get to a point where like you feel so out of control that you end up taking food like that isn't yours. And that happened to me, and that's happened to many of the clients I've worked with, and so you feel like terrible for doing that after the fact, and you feel like you're greedy, but it's again not the case. You're dealing with like a biologically driven urge that basically took over you, and you can't blame yourself for that, even though it's hard. That's another one. Let's see. What else? I would say, and this one's going to be controversial, and again, I'm agnostic. So I believe both sides, but binge eating is not an emotional problem. I think a lot of people, the reason I say this is because for me, when I was struggling with binge eating, I thought my emotions were a big part of the problem. And I dug for what trauma in my life, what emotions were driving this behavior and triggering this behavior. And while that can be a helpful part of recovery, that wasn't what caused it in the first place. it might be that an emotion triggers you to binge, but for somebody else, they might have that emotion, they get stressed, they have anxiety, they have depression, and they aren't triggered to binge. So it's not the cause. The cause is restriction. The cause is not eating enough. And then eventually we start to tie that behavior to emotions and to things that happen in our lives. And so that's why I say that. And it can be so powerful to learn that for people, because it's like, oh, okay, like if I just start eating enough, a lot of the urges to binge and overeat will die down. Now, I don't have as much of a drive to overeat when I'm stressed. Maybe there's a little bit of like residual, just like habit going on, but that's so much easier to break that pattern than it is to try to not stress eat when you're uncontrollably hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another big one.
I know we've talked about just kind of the non-diet approach, and I just want to dig into that a little bit, because there are so many people who suggest calorie counting and portion control and all of that. So why should people trust a non-diet approach to helping binge eating?
So I would reply with a question. If you have dieted, how well has that worked for you?
Yeah.
And like it's laughable, yeah, but also that can be a really powerful question, even to ask yourself. Like I have clients where it's part of the journey. Like you don't have to be completely gung-ho for like leaving diets forever to start recovery.
Yeah.
I was actually on a podcast with one of my clients the other day, and she was reflecting back on part of her journey and talking about how she had kind of been resistant to letting go of dieting. And at one point she had asked me, she's like, "Hey, Michelle, like I'm really having a hard time right now. And I'm thinking about going back to this diet where I had lost a lot of weight and like I thought it was working well and I was feeling good." And I just reminded her with that question, like, okay, but something like, even if there were parts of that worked, that were like good for you, you're here because of what you did then. So there was something missing, something off. And if we can just have like just that, then that's enough to try something else. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. I mean, the question of like, how'd that work out for you before? Because if you're a person who has been on multiple different kinds of diets, I have in the past. I've been on lots of different diets. And you're right. Like, there's not a single one of them that was completely sustainable for one reason or another. It wasn't always the same reason. There wasn't one that I was like, I could live like this forever. It's just, I haven't come across one that's like that. And maybe if I ever go back to dieting, really, maybe there'll be a magic one by then. But as far as I know, there's still not. Again, because if there were an easy button, everyone would push it. Everyone would push it. It wouldn't be an effort. It would just be like, yeah, done, easy, no problem.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you made a really good point there too, and because it's like, I think the issue is when we think of a diet, we're looking for like that one that we can do forever.
Yeah.
But the problem is life doesn't work that way. Like with anything, like I'm trying to think of an analogy here, but like we move, but we don't always stay in the same home. We lose relationships and we gain relationships. Things are changing constantly. And the same thing goes for the way you eat. You're gonna, like, if you have kids, that's gonna change the way you eat dramatically, because there's different nutritional needs. There's different hunger and satiety hormones at play because of the changes in your sleep patterns. There's lots of changes going on. And then there's just the fact that you're so busy that you're going to have to eat differently. Yeah. Right? So that's like just one example, right? So like, of course, and then our views change, right? Like when I recovered from binge eating, I had a completely different way of eating than I do now. And at that time, I was thinking like, I'll never eat gluten again. Like there were certain things like peanut butter because I thought that it had like too much fungus in it, and I thought, oh, I shouldn't eat that. And so I still had like these things, right? And I eat peanut butter now. I love peanut butter. So like that changed, and our diet should be able to change. It should be able to shift.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
I know you've come up with this 4-key approach to healing from binge eating. Can you walk us through kind of those steps and what that looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we've kind of like talked a little bit about some of all of them. I say key, not step, because you can kind of do it. There's like no order, if that makes sense. But the first one is removing binge driving mindsets. So that could be diet mentalities. A lot of perfectionism around food is a big one. By the way, like, how do you remove these? It's a practice. It's a practice. First thing is awareness, right? Like, oh, am I right now being really rigid about what I'm eating? Am I being perfectionistic around it? Am I like saying, oh, this is bad, this is good? Like, we're paying attention to that, bringing awareness to it, and then we're replacing that with something else. Or just removing it and letting all foods be okay. That's a really big place that I start with people is, okay, just you're allowed to eat anything, okay? That's where we're starting. So some other ones are like Last Supper mentality. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like starting tomorrow, I can't have chocolate anymore. And then what do you do tonight? Eat a bunch of chocolate. So that's our Last Supper mentality. That goes for like exercise too, right? Like starting tomorrow, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. every day and work out. It doesn't work very well for a lot of people. So mentalities like that, we're just bringing awareness to them gently, compassionately, helping ourselves to change them. I do a lot of journaling work with clients for that, and also just talking it through. Yeah, and then the second bit is, of course, nourishment. So making sure that we're getting enough whole, nutrient-dense food. This is not just about like getting enough calories in general. Again, it's about getting all the nutrients. And it's also about balanced eating, so getting all the food groups every meal. There's an amazing book for binge eating recovery that's called The Binge Code. It's by Ali Care. There's not a book, like there's a lot of binge eating recovery books, but that's the one I just recommend the most because it's so straightforward. It really goes into the biology part of what drives binge eating. But they talk about safe eating. So it's just an acronym for like getting enough food. S is for structure. So you're eating regularly. You're not skipping meals. You're not trying to make up for binges with skipping meals. Getting 3 solid meals, probably snacks in there too. A is for adequacy. So that's about enough calories, enough like just food, just enough food. You're feeling full. You're feeling satisfied. F is for food groups. So you're getting all the food groups every meal. Like you mentioned, like you have your kids have protein, fiber, right?
Yep.
Like so good, so good. Such a useful thing to do because those are both helpful for satiety. So is fat. And then a lot of people who are struggling with binge eating are restricting carbohydrates. When we restrict, it's like putting it on a pedestal. It's you make it like this taboo thing. Who doesn't want taboo? We love taboo. Like it makes us want it more. So we got to take it off that and like eat it. And then E is for enjoyment. So that one is part of eating enough too. It's like getting enough food that you actually enjoy. And having foods be allowed that aren't nutrient dense, that are just for enjoyment. So there's that. And then the third one is overcoming triggering foods and situations. So if people I find, again, that once we're nourishing enough, the urge to overeat, to binge dies down a lot once we do that for long enough. And sometimes there are still certain foods that we just like feel are really hard not to eat too much of. And so what I do with clients is I do sort of like, I mean, I'm not a therapist, it's not exposure therapy, but we expose them to that food in a very like, we create a plan together of like how we're going to do that and make it feel comfortable for them. And we just have them eat it more regularly and practice building trust around it. I think a big mistake a lot of people will make is they're like, oh, I can't eat one piece of chocolate without eating the whole bag of chocolate.
Mm.
Well, if that's the case, the solution isn't to avoid chocolate, because if you avoid chocolate, you're perpetuating this. You're never going to learn how to control yourself around it. You can't just do that by avoiding it. So we have to face it and start having it in moderation. And that will not usually happen in one try, but it will happen with practice over time. So there's that. And then the last one is probably where we get to feeling a little bit more like other sorts of addiction recovery. And that's replacing binge eating with whatever is better. So, like, if you used it for comfort, if you used it for relaxation, stress relief, then you're going to be left with a space there when that's gone. So we replace it with something else. And that can be so many different things for so many different people. So sometimes it's just like hobbies, fun things. Sometimes at that point, like people actually start to work towards other kind of like fitness goals or taking care of their health in a totally different way where it's about nourishing themselves and feeling better. And then for other people, it's like, I want to focus on my career, or I want to learn to regulate and do some breath work and yoga and yeah, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah. I think that having that approach, like you just talked about in a very holistic way of you're addressing the entire person. I think that's what's, I guess, really has the opportunity to resonate with someone is like, it's not super, super focused on binge eating. It's focused on how do I nourish my body? How do I nourish my mind and all of this stuff, which I think is unique. I think, and it's necessary also. You mentioned stress. So how does stress impact binge eating, and what are some ways you can regulate the nervous system in response to stress?
Yeah. Um, let's see. So in the simplest form, stress, if you're familiar with the sympathetic state or fight or flight state, that's our stress state in our bodies. And in that state, we are pretty unconscious. It's going to be really hard to think consciously and make clear decisions. We just sort of do what we automatically do. And that's great for survival, but it's not great when you want to break a habit. Um, so doing things to help yourself calm your nervous system down and get to a more rest and digest state will help you to think more clearly and break a habit like binge eating or overeating. The other way that stress plays into binge eating is just the relationship with blood sugar regulation. Blood sugar is actually huge it's a huge contributor to binge eating or dysregulation of blood sugar is because when we have these huge spikes, like say, for example, when you had a binge, you're probably binging on mostly high sugary, high carby, high fatty foods. That's usually the case. So we have this big spike in blood sugar, and then after a while, we get this huge crash. And when that crash happens, our stress hormones go way up. And those actually drive more cravings because our body's like, oh, we just got way too low in blood sugar, and so we need more. So that's the other way that it really plays into it.
Yeah.
Oh, you did ask for what you could do about that.
Yes.
You want me to go into that? Yeah, so let's see. So when someone is in the middle of still recovering from binge eating, we can do little activities that will help to regulate their nervous system. It doesn't usually I encourage them to do it not just when they have an urge to binge, but like anytime they feel kind of stressed or dysregulated. So it's things like taking a deep breath. It's things like doing tension release, if you're familiar, where you tense up and release. So I actually went through some training for a protocol that is a music therapy. Anyway, I'm going on a total tangent here, but I work with a psychologist where we work with people who are suffering from long COVID, and we
Mm.
used music therapy and nervous system regulation activities to help them recover. And so there are so many activities that you can do. Like, for example, like just covering your eyes. Covering your eyes causes your heart rate to go down.
Oh,
And so you
interesting.
can, yeah, so you can do stuff like that. Or orienting is one of my favorites, where you literally just like look around. It's something that like animals do. You know, your dog will sniff around the house
Hmm.
in a new place, right? But we do it, and you get these cues like a yawn or a spontaneous sigh that are telling you, oh, your nervous system is liking that. It's saying, hey, like this is calming you down. So stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really neat. I love hearing the different suggestions of here's how to here's how to address it because yeah, stress is a huge deal and I think we are learning more and more that stress is a bigger deal than anyone would like to admit and that our lives are inherently stressful a lot of the time. Even if you're working a pretty steady 9 to 5 job, it's still there's still a lot of stress that your body is experiencing and your mind is experiencing.
Mhm.
And so we're learning a lot about that, but it's nice to also be like, and here's some things you can do about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it makes a big difference of just these simple like, looking around and looking around the room that you're in is so simple. Covering your eyes is
Mhm.
so simple. Like taking a deep breath, it's so simple, but it really can be helpful. So I appreciate the sharing those with us for sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
You also talked about just kind of reconnecting with food when you're in recovery. What does it look like to start viewing food as a source of nourishment and joy rather than stress?
Yeah. Um, I think step one is letting go of restricting. Um, if you've been doing that,
Hmm.
um, letting go of the diet mentality that you need to eat less, eat less, eat less, eat less. Um, because that's going to drive this feeling of food being something to fear, that it's not okay, that's
Mm.
not allowed. So that's step one. And then the next bit is letting go of any remaining guilt or shame around certain foods. Um, and then if we can start to shift, and I think we need this as an entire society, our view of health, of healthy eating from eat less, move more to nourish more, nourish more, rest more. How do I care for this body so that it can thrive? You know, like you would any creature, like you wouldn't look at a dying plant and think I need to like take something away from it. You'd be like, oh, what does this plant need? Like I need to give it more water. It needs more water. So same thing goes for us as humans. And if we can start to think that way, then coming from that place, it becomes a lot more natural and easy to see food as like this nourishing thing and this thing that can bring us joy and care.
Mm. Yeah. We've got a great question that Bite Mark sent in ahead of time. She would like to know what is your favorite poem?
Oh yes. So I heard I heard this question on a couple of your other
Yes.
podcasts,
Yep.
and I hear that it's okay to have songs
Yes,
and to
absolutely.
answer, which is great because I don't have a favorite poem. Well, okay, I sort of have one favorite poem, but it's really cheesy, and I debated on sharing. So my husband wrote me a poem as his proposal for
Oh,
our wedding.
that is really cute.
So
I
I
love
know
that.
it has to be my favorite.
Of course it does.
Yeah, but like I love poetry and I love especially when it's in a song. So, but I'm also again kind of cheesy with these things. Beautiful Things by
Oh,
Vincent
yeah,
Price.
yeah, for sure.
Uh, Like I just love really simple stuff like that. That's just like so relatable,
Hmm.
and it just wrenches your heart. Like that. Literally, I can listen to that song and instantly it brings up tears every
Yes,
single time.
yes.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that one a lot. What is your favorite life hack?
Oh yes. Again, I have more than one favorite, but first thing that pops into my head is actually has to do with food, and that is if you ever get fresh herbs like cilantro and parsley. So I always got so frustrated because you get this nice big bushel, and within like a couple of days, it's all wilty and just
Yeah.
getting like that nasty black stuff and all stinky. And so there's a way to make it last for like weeks, I swear. So you take like a jar or a glass, you stick it in there with some water, and then cover it with like a Ziploc bag
Hmm.
or a plastic bag, stick it in the fridge. And it saved me so much fresh herbs that were otherwise always going bad because they last weeks
Yeah.
in the little container. Yeah, that's
Just
one of
kind
my
of
favorites.
treating them like flowers. You got to give them some
Yeah,
water
exactly.
and let them live a little bit longer. I like that. That's good.
Yeah,
You said you had more than one?
I do.
What else you got for us?
I can share the other one. Um, the other one's a little bit maybe more morbid, and it won't work for everybody. Um, but I, like I said, I've struggled with anxiety, and one of the places that particularly triggers that is with driving.
Hmm.
Is I was in a lot of accidents as a kid, so I had a lot of fear around driving. But one day, my closest friend, I was talking to her about this struggle, and uh, somehow I came up with the idea of she encouraged me to basically accept death.
Yeah.
And it is so helpful. It is so helpful. So now when I drive, if I start to feel anxious about the driving and feel like I'm gonna like wreck or something, I just think to myself, you know what? Worst case, I could die.
Hmm.
That could happen. We could get in a big wreck and it would be awful and that could happen. And that just instantly not anxious anymore. Really, really, really helpful. So again,
Yeah.
won't work for everybody, but maybe it'll work for somebody.
Yeah, I would imagine that could make someone's anxiety worse if
Could
that's
make it
the
worse.
thought. Yeah. But at
Right.
the same time, it's like saying what is the worst that could happen in this and then just being like,
Yeah.
okay, that's the worst. Anything other than that is fine. And even anything up to that and including that is like, well, that's what it's going to be. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all for I guess not embracing death, but embracing the possibility because everyone's going to die at some point. Every living thing is going to die at some point. We were talking about when we have a beautiful cat named Tyrion, and my oldest was like, "I'm going to be really sad when he dies." He was watching some show about cats and dogs, and he's like, "I'm going to be really sad whenever Tyrion dies," and I was like, "Yeah, that's going to be really sad when it happens." Because it's going to happen. So you got to just enjoy the time that you have with him now. So um,
Yeah.
I'm all for if it helps thinking that to yourself for sure.
If it helps. Yeah. If
Yes,
it makes
if it
things worse,
helps.
don't go there
Yes, for
because
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, it is time for our magic moment of the stream. So, if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception around mental illness or talking about mental health, what would it be?
Yeah. Um, well, because of my focus and profession, I lean towards directing this towards food and the way we think around food. And basically, what I said earlier, I would want people to think of healthy eating no longer as dieting. I would have them think
Yeah.
about it as nourishment, caring for your body. It's like not mental health, but it is, because when we're feeling fear about food, being afraid of food, or feeling like certain foods are bad or wrong, or the way we eat isn't okay, it contributes to feeling guilt and shame, and that can be really, really awful. So I think that would be a wonderful change in the world.
Totally agree. I think that would be really helpful too. Like, it would just be great. It would just be great.
It would just be great. Absolutely.
I think that about a lot of these whenever we get to the end and it's like, yeah, that would be wonderful. Please snap your
Please.
fingers and make it so. Most definitely.
Right.
For sure.
Exactly.
Well, that is kind of bringing us to a close. So I'm going to post your links one more time in the chat for anyone who wants to connect with you. And again, y'all, if you go to Instagram, Facebook, website, or anything like that, make sure that you like a couple of Michelle's posts, leave a comment. Engagement is really what helps get people exposure and get people that attention that they so much deserve. And Michelle, while I'm doing that, if there's anything that we didn't talk about or anything you want to throw out there as far as resources, books, websites, anything like that, I'm just going to let you have the floor for a little bit.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure you'll put it in the notes, but that book, The Binge Code, is
Yeah.
fantastic. I wish I had it when I was struggling with binge eating, or knew about it, and I didn't. But it's just really practical and a really good guide to healing your relationship with food, overcoming binge eating. Even if you're not struggling with binge eating per se, if you just feel like you'd like to have a better relationship with food, or if you just like to feel a little more in control, or feel like you can get off the yo-yo diet roller coaster, that can be a really great place to go. And then I also have a free email course, and you can get access to that through the link in my Instagram bio. It's in all of my social media profiles. But yeah, just sign up for my newsletter and you'll get it automatically. It's a 3-day course, goes step by step through some of the same stuff I teach my clients on exactly how to start recovering, break free from binge eating. So
I love that you offer something like that. That's wonderful. Really, truly. And yes, if y'all are looking for any links to anything that we talked about tonight, I've been posting them as we go. So if you're here live, you're free to go ahead and click through on those through the chat. If you are listening to this later, there is a link in the show notes with a page that you can go visit and see all of the resources and information that we talked about today. So Michelle, thank you so much for taking the time out today. I really very much appreciate you being willing to have this conversation. Like I said at the beginning, it is so important, and it is something that does not get enough attention, in my opinion. So thank you for sharing your story and for just sharing this information and these resources with us.
absolutely. And thanks to you, right back at you for having me on here. And you have so many amazing guests on here, and it's such an honor, but also like I really appreciate you, people like you who, bring these voices out there and bring this information to people who would otherwise not have it. It's really, really amazing. So
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. If you're still here, I just want to say I see you. Whether this conversation hit close to home or gave you some perspective on what others might be going through, I hope you're walking away from it with something useful. Talking with Michelle was such a powerful reminder that binge eating, IBS, and chronic pain don't happen in a vacuum. These aren't character flaws or personal failures. They're layered. They're influenced by stress, diet culture, misinformation, trauma, lack of sleep, anxiety, you name it. And recovery isn't about perfection. It's about learning to listen to your body, figuring out what it actually needs, and making peace with the fact that healing doesn't look the same for everyone. One thing Michelle said that really stuck with me is how people struggling with binge eating are often incredibly disciplined, sometimes to a fault. That hit hard because if you've been through that cycle, you know how exhausting it is to try to out-discipline your body instead of giving it what it needs. The pressure to always be on it is real, and it's a lie. We also talked about how food isn't just about fuel or macros. It's also about satisfaction, connection, and care. You're allowed to enjoy your food. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to choose what works best for you, even if it doesn't check some wellness influencers' boxes. So if you're someone who's been stuck in that binge restrict spiral or navigating chronic health stuff that makes food feel complicated, please know you're not alone. You're not broken, and there's nothing wrong with needing support. If this episode helped you or made you feel seen, I'd really love it if you'd take a second to rate and review or leave a comment wherever you're listening. It helps more people find these conversations, and honestly, it means the world to me and to guests who come on and share so openly. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that button so you don't miss future episodes. You can also share this episode directly with someone who needs it, maybe a friend, a partner, or a family member who's struggling but hasn't quite found the words for it yet. Sometimes just hearing someone else talk about the hard stuff can be the first step towards feeling a little less alone. You can find more info about Michelle and how to connect with her in the show notes. And as always, even if things feel messy or heavy right now, even if you're falling apart a little bit, you are still worthy of care, love, and healing. Thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you next time.